I was on a road trip to meet up with a best friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a couple years. He had just bought a home in Montana, so it was a great excuse to hang out for a while and catch up on life. The drive was 10 hours from where I lived, and due to work schedules, I ended up leaving home at 8 p.m. to drive overnight and arrive sometime around 6 a.m. I was tired from having worked the whole day before leaving, and being alone on the road made it hard to keep my eyes open. I knew it was going to be a struggle, but after a few hours of driving, I was struggling much more than I'd anticipated. By 1 a.m., it was becoming dangerous how sleepy I was getting, so I was going to pull over at the next town and find a parking lot to rest in for a few hours. But as I continued driving, there was nothing but road for miles and miles. I must have fully dozed off, because the next thing I knew, I was halfway in a ditch slamming on my brakes. Thankfully, I had woken up in time to stop from hitting any trees or causing serious damage to my car, but I was way off the side of the road. After taking a moment to collect myself, I got out and assessed the situation. It was very dark outside, with only the headlights from my car providing light, but the situation did not look good. I had veered a few feet off the road into a steep ditch that separated the road from the woods. I stepped onto the road and looked all the way down in both directions, but it was completely dark both ways. No signs of anything nearby. Still trying to keep myself calm, I went back to my car and tried to reverse out of the ditch, but it wouldn't even budge. The angle my car was in, my back tires had no traction at all. I pulled out my phone, and by some miracle, I had 1 bar of service. I called 911, and though the connection was choppy, I got the message across. They said they could have an officer with a winch down to help me in about 2 hours. I waited in my car for a while, looking between the road and the empty woods around me, getting kind of creeped out the more I thought of how remote I was. After 30 minutes, I laid back in my seat and tried to catch some sleep. Unfortunately, the whole situation had me too shaken to fall asleep though. I sat up and looked around again, not seeing any lights on the road. But just before I looked away, I barely made out a shape on the other side of the road. Just 20 or 30 feet from my car, a truck was parked with all of its lights off. I never heard or saw them pull up, but I knew they weren't there before. It was too dark to see any details, but I knew the police would have had their lights on for sure. So why was this truck stopped out here, right by me in the middle of nowhere, with all of its lights off? I stared at it for at least 5 minutes, not seeing any movement or signs of someone being inside it. A chill ran through me, and I decided to call the police for an update on their location, but as I turned and reached back for my phone, a figure was standing at my passenger window. They were peering into my car, looking directly at me. His soulless eyes showed that he had no intent to help me. The shock of it all had me frozen in fear. The man then walked around my car and stared at me again through my window. Seeing him just a foot away from me with only the thin glass between us was the most terrified I'd ever felt. The man tested the door handle a couple times before saying something under his breath and hitting the window in frustration. He turned around and called something out in a different language, like he was telling someone to do something. He then turned back and started looking through the other windows. I was in a complete panic, breathing heavily and preparing for whatever was to happen next. But then I heard and saw the truck speeding away. The man by my car looked over like he was surprised and ran up to the road. After a second, he immediately sprinted past my car and disappeared in the woods. Moments later, I saw flashing red and blue lights coming up in the distance. I told the officer what had happened, but of course the man and whoever was in the truck had gotten away with no evidence left behind, other than the eerie shoe prints leading into the woods. All in all, I made it to my friend's house safely afterwards, but there have not been any updates on the men. I think I had barely gotten away, just moments before something terrible.